The daughter's secret when love turns to murder, full true crime story. The 911 call that changed everything. The call came in just before sunrise on October 2, 2017. The voice on the line trembled between disbelief and dread. 911, what's your emergency? The operator asked. My ex-husband, something's wrong. My kids came home this morning and said their dad's gone, and their sister too. That voice belonged to Ellie Frier, a mother in Medford, Oregon, who was about to relive the worst morning of her life. Police rushed to Benson Street, a quiet neighborhood wrapped in early morning fog. To Officer Logan Boyd, it seemed like just another welfare check, until he stepped through the door. The faint metallic smell hit first. Then the blood. It was everywhere, on the walls, the carpet, even leading toward the carport outside. A brutal assault had taken place here. But there were no bodies. Ellie Frier, a respected father of 3 and a marching band dad known for showing up to every game, was missing. So was his 15-year-old daughter, Ellie. Inside the house, the youngest daughter, Sierra, tried to explain what she'd heard during the night. Her voice shook as she told Detective Shannon Reynolds that she'd been awakened by the sound of shattering glass, then silence. She thought it was just a dream until she touched something wet on the couch and realized it was blood. Her father and sister were gone. Detectives immediately launched a missing persons and potential homicide investigation. Every minute mattered. They fanned out through the streets of Medford, knocking on doors and collecting security footage. On a neighbor's camera, Erin's car was seen leaving the driveway around 5:30 a.m. But the footage didn't show who was driving. Meanwhile, inside the police station, tension was rising. The name Ellie kept surfacing in every conversation. She was described as bright and musically talented, a girl who once played piano beside her dad. But she'd recently been caught in a forbidden romance with a 19-year-old named Gavin McFarland. Her father had told her to end it. Ellie didn't listen. When Detective Reynolds interviewed Sierra again, the girl hesitated before whispering that she had seen 2 people outside the house that night, her sister's boyfriend Gavin, and another man she didn't recognize. That clue changed everything. Within hours, an all-units alert was issued for Gavin McFarland, Russell Jones, and the missing car. Patrol officers combed the hills east of Medford, guided by faint pings from Gavin's phone. Finally, just before noon, they spotted the missing vehicle parked along a rural road. Blood streaked the back bumper. The trunk was warm. When they pried it open, the sight froze them in place. The carpet was soaked dark red, but there was no body. Only the scent of iron and something decaying lingered in the air. Whoever had done this was nearby. An hour later, investigators got another call. 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, were walking calmly down a busy street just miles away. When police pulled up, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was Ellie Frier, alive and seemingly unhurt, walking hand in hand with Gavin McFarland. To Detective Bill Ford, the moment was surreal. They weren't hiding. They weren't crying. They looked like kids strolling through town. But to him, the message was clear: if Ellie was safe, then someone else, her father, wasn't. The pair was taken into custody, along with the third boy, Russell Jones, who claimed to be just a friend. As detectives separated them for questioning, the story began to unravel in ways no one expected. Ellie told police she had gone for a walk early that morning and simply ran into Gavin and Russell by chance. She said she had no idea what happened to her father. Her voice was calm, almost distant. That's really disturbing to hear, she said when told her dad was missing. Russell, however, couldn't stop talking. After a few cigarettes and some coaxing, he finally confessed that the 3 of them had gone to the house, but only, he claimed, to help Ellie escape a bad situation. When Detective Ford pressed him, Russell's tone shifted. 95% of it's true, he admitted. 5%'s a lie. That 5% would soon lead police to the mountains outside Medford, where beneath a green tarp, they would discover the grim truth about what really happened to Ellie Frier, the confession and the hidden truth. The ride up the mountain was silent except for the crunch of gravel beneath the police cruiser's tires. Detective Bill Ford sat behind the wheel, his mind racing through the possibilities. In the passenger seat sat Russell Jones, hands cuffed, face calm. When Ford asked again if he could take them to Erin, Russell simply pointed toward the trees. "Stop here," he said. Ford's flashlight cut through the pine shadows, catching something green near a cluster of rocks. A tarp. Beneath it, confirmation of what everyone feared. The remains of Ellie Frier, 41 years old, father of 3. He had been brutally bludgeoned, his skull shattered from multiple blows. At that moment, the investigation changed from a missing persons case to a premeditated murder. Back at headquarters, the team began piecing together the night's events. The story Russell told was only partly true, and what he left out was far darker. Russell's story. After being read his rights, Russell spoke freely. He said Gavin had planned to help Ellie escape from what they called a bad home. He described Ellie's father as abusive and controlling, claiming Gavin only meant to scare him. But when Detective Ford pressed for details, Russell hesitated. 95% true, he'd said earlier, and now, under pressure, that missing 5% began to unravel. "I just helped move what was left," he confessed quietly. "Gavin, he did it." Ford leaned in. "Did what?" Russell swallowed hard. "He killed him." He explained that Gavin entered the Frier home armed with a baseball bat, creeping through the dark living room while Erin slept on the couch. When Erin stirred, Gavin panicked and struck. Once, twice, then over and over until the room fell silent. Russell said Ellie had stood in the hallway, watching. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't tried to stop him. When Ford asked where the weapon was, Russell said they'd thrown it near the body, an aluminum bat stained with blood. It would later be recovered, the forensic results matching Erin's DNA perfectly. The boyfriend's confession. Detectives turned next to Gavin McFarland, the 19-year-old boyfriend at the center of it all. He looked pale, exhausted, his hands trembling as he spoke. "I know I'm in serious trouble, aren't I?" he muttered. Gavin admitted he and Russell had gone to the house that night, but insisted Erin had provoked the attack. He claimed Erin had pointed a rifle at him, and he'd acted in self-defense. But when confronted with the blood evidence, his story shifted again. Finally, after hours of interrogation, Gavin broke. "I just acted on instinct," he said. "I swung the bat 5, maybe 6 times. I didn't mean to." He stopped mid-sentence, voice cracking. Detectives watched him reenact the blows in the air, raising his arms and mimicking the downward motion. It was chilling. He described the sound, the same metallic, dinging, Sierra had heard from her bedroom. He later whispered, almost inaudibly, "I fractured his skull. Caved it in. I'm sorry." Ellie's turn. All that was left was Ellie. To many, she was still a child, barely 15. But detectives now saw her as the key to understanding everything. In the interview room, she looked small beneath the fluorescent lights, knees tucked into her chest. Detective Stephanie Jackson tried a gentle approach. "We found your dad's car, Ellie. We found blood. Can you tell me what happened?" "I don't know," Ellie replied. "I left early. I went for a walk." But text messages would tell a different story. On Gavin's phone, investigators discovered a series of messages from Ellie. "You want to kill him now, don't you? We need to make sure he's dead before we leave the house. I'm ready when you are." When detectives showed her the screenshots, Ellie froze. Then, tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean it like that," she whispered. "I just wanted it to stop." Pressed further, she finally admitted to handing Gavin the bat. "He said he'd only scare him," she muttered. "I believed him." Detectives exchanged looks. The evidence was overwhelming. Ellie wasn't just a bystander, she was a co-conspirator. A love that turned deadly. By the end of the day, all 3, Ellie Frier, Gavin McFarland, and Russell Jones, were charged with murder and conspiracy. What had begun as a teenage romance had spiraled into tragedy. Detective Ford stared through the interrogation glass as Ellie cried softly in the corner of the room. "She wanted love," he murmured. But she didn't understand what that love would cost. Outside, rain began to fall over Medford, washing over the streets where just hours earlier, a young girl had walked hand in hand with her father's killer. Justice, lies, and redemption. The courtroom was silent when Ellie Frier walked in. The once bright-eyed marching band student now looked like a ghost of herself, frail, quiet, her wrists trembling as she sat down. The charge sheet in front of her read conspiracy to commit murder. But to the public, her name was already sealed to a darker label, the daughter who plotted her father's death. For months, the story had consumed Medford, Oregon. Neighbors whispered about the girl who fell in love with an older man and lost everything. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, calling it the daughter's secret case. Yet behind every headline were the fragments of a family that would never heal. The two stories. From the start, there were two competing versions of truth. Detectives believed Ellie masterminded the murder, manipulating Gavin and Russell to carry out the act so she could finally be free from her father's control. They pointed to the text messages as evidence of planning, and to the way Ellie had walked calmly beside Gavin after the killing as proof she felt no remorse. But Ellie's defense told a different story. Her new attorney, Elisa Kaplan, claimed Ellie was not a cold-blooded planner, but a terrified child who had suffered years of abuse and manipulation, first from her father, and then from Gavin. In a trembling voice, Ellie told investigators that her father had become violent and inappropriate after the divorce. She described being pushed, grabbed, called names, and worse. "He used to be a good dad," she said softly, then something changed. But detectives couldn't verify the claims. No prior police reports. No witnesses. No physical evidence. Only words. When investigators asked Ellie's younger sisters, Sierra and Lily, they both insisted their father had never hurt them. "He yelled when she broke rules," Sierra said. "But he wasn't abusive. He just didn't like Gavin." The contradiction split the family apart. Half the town saw Ellie as a victim, the other half saw her as a manipulator hiding behind a tragic excuse. The plea. As the case moved toward trial, the weight of evidence was crushing. The bloody bat. The text messages. The confession. Prosecutors warned Ellie she could face decades in prison if convicted of first-degree murder. In January 2019, her lawyers reached a deal. Ellie would plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder as an adult. She was just 15 years old. In court, she read a short statement. "I am sorry for all the pain I've caused. I was scared, confused, and I made choices that destroyed my family. I'll never be able to take them back." The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. Gavin McFarland, who swung the bat, received 25 years to life. Russell Jones, the accomplice who led police to the body, received 15 years. To Ellie's supporters, it was unfair, a child punished more severely than a grown man who planned and carried out the killing. But to Detective Ford, who had stared into the broken home on Benson Street, the punishment fit the crime. "She started it," he told reporters. "Without her, this never would have happened." The aftermath. The years that followed were marked by silence. Maggie Frier, the mother who made the 911 call that began it all, rarely spoke publicly again. Her youngest daughters grew up without their father, or their sister. Sierra, once the frightened 11-year-old who found blood on her hands, joined the National Guard after high school. She told an interviewer years later, "My dad was a good man. I love him. I'll spend my life trying to make him proud." Ellie, meanwhile, served her time in a juvenile facility, earning 2 master's degrees in psychology and justice studies before being transferred to an adult prison. Kaplan, her attorney, continued to appeal for a reduced sentence. She was a child, Kaplan argued. A child who was failed by everyone, by her parents, by her boyfriend, and by the system. Detective Shannon Reynolds, one of the original investigators, remains conflicted to this day. "At first, I thought Ellie was the mastermind," she said. "Then I read Gavin's letters, the ones where he told her what to say, how to cry for the jury. That's when I realized, maybe he was the one pulling the strings." The legacy. To this day, no one truly knows what happened behind closed doors in the Frier household. The truth, like the blood that stained the living room carpet, has been washed, but never erased. For Maggie, every October 2nd feels like a replay of that morning. For Sierra, it's a memory she can't run from. And for Ellie, it's a life sentence that began long before prison, the moment she mistook love for rescue and ended up orchestrating ruin. Standing in her cell years later, Ellie reportedly told a visitor, "People think I'm a monster. But I was just a girl who wanted to be loved." Outside, the small Oregon town of Medford still remembers the name Frier, not as a family, but as a tragedy carved into its history.